welcome everybody to the MAG Public Safety Answering Point Managers Group. MAG staff will now take roll to ensure we have a quorum present for the meeting. Please note, all meeting attendees will enter muted. Phone only attendees will need to press *6 to unmute at the beginning of the meeting. And if they are subsequently muted by the host, please remember to mute when you are not speaking to create a positive experience for all attendees. Liz, do you mind taking roll?
Okay, we have AMR, Ian Walter. ASU, Trish, we know she's getting her mic. Avondale.
Here.
Buckeye.
Jim's here.
Hi, Jim. Chandler, PD.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Stephanie.
DPS.
Lynn Kolobowski's here.
Lynn.
Anna Baum is here.
Okay, Lynn and Anna will be on for DPS. Fort McDowell, PD. Sergeant Beebe, are you on the line? That will be a no for Fort McDowell. Gilbert, PD.
Kim's here. Thank you.
Kim. Glendale, PD.
Loretta's here.
Thank you. Goodyear, PD.
Shauna's here.
Thank you, Shauna. Luke Air Force Base.
Yeah, Dave's here.
Dave's here. MCSO.
Good morning, present.
Thanks, Jim. Mesa Fire.
Nicole is here.
Hi, Nicole. Mesa PD.
Christine is here.
Hi, Christine. Paradise Valley PD. Okay. We'll move on. Peoria, I know Brittany was going to be gone. Is there a substitute for her? Doesn't sound like it. Phoenix Fire.
Hi, Liz. Nicole's here.
Nicole's here. Phoenix PD. Have an answer from Phoenix. Salt River.
Good morning. Kim's here.
Kim's here. Hi, Kim. Scottsdale.
Good morning. Karen's here.
Hi, Karen. Surprise.
Domela's here.
Hi, Domela. Tempe. Tempe PD. Patrick, are you on the line? Okay. Tolleson. Okay. Adriana, are you on the line? And the mighty Wickenburg.
Aaron's here, thank you.
Thanks, Lieutenant Hadley. Okay. We do have a quorum. Chairman Fuller.
Hey, Liz, this is Craig with Apache Junction. I'm here too.
Did I forget you? Oh,
That's okay.
I'm writing it real big with stars all over it.
I'm sure you are.
Thanks,
Liz, I also saw that Heather Beckwith joined as well.
Oh, Heather, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. We have Paradise Valley. So is there anyone else that I missed? Very good. All right. Chairman Polia, full quorum.
All right, a quorum is now present. The meeting of the MAG Public Safety Answering Point Managers Group is called to order. Just a quick announcement. We operate our committee meetings in full transparency, giving the public access to committee meetings, materials, and discussions. The public cannot view the chat comments. As a result, we are disabling the chat feature in all committee meetings moving forward. If you need technical assistance during a meeting, please contact the helpline at 602-452-5095 or contact the MAG staff assigned to the meeting. We appreciate your understanding in helping them to maintain the transparent discussion for the benefit of the public. Now we'll go to a call to audience. Members of the public were asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the post start time for the meeting. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. MAG staff, have we received any public comments? If so, please read them at this time.
Chairman Folio, we have not received any comments at this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Liz. Moving on to agenda item number 3, the approval of the February 11th, 2021 PSAT Manager Group meeting minutes. Our next item is the approval. Does any member of the PSAT Manager Group have questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, not hearing any. Could I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
This is Dom with Hennessy. I'll motion to approve.
Karen Sutherland, second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion from Domela from Surprise and Karen Sutherland from Scottsdale. Is there a discussion of the motion? Okay, MAG staff, would you please take a roll call vote?
Apache Junction,
Aye.
Avondale,
Aye.
Buckeye, Buckeye PD, Jim,
Sorry, aye.
Chandler PD,
Aye.
Fort McDowell, Gilbert PD,
Aye.
Glendale PD,
Aye.
Goodyear PD, Goodyear, Shauna.
I'm here.
We're voting on the minutes.
Pardon?
We're voting on the minutes of accepting the minutes.
I approve.
Okay. MCSO,
Aye.
Mesa PD,
Aye.
Paradise Valley PD,
Aye.
Peoria PD, Phoenix Police, Salt River PD,
Aye.
Scottsdale PD,
Aye.
Surprise PD,
Aye.
Tempe PD, Tolleson PD, Wickenburg PD.
Aye.
Chairman Foley, we have our votes in.
Members joining by phone only, please remember to press *6 to unmute. Moving on to agenda item number 4, which is the administrator report. The 911 administrator will provide a report to the PSAT managers on activities and programs managed by the Maricopa Region 911. Liz Graber, 911 administrator, will provide that report.
Thank you, Mike. So to start out with, we have, for our SANS, we've had 54 activations to date. That's trending about on a high end to what we were doing last year. I just want to remind the PSAT managers that when you have a launch over 5,000 telephones that you've identified, and you don't change the hour to default higher than 1 hour, it will stop after 1 hour, and that's approximately 5,000 telephones. So you ballpark that for every 5,000 you need an hour. So if you're doing one for 10, 2 hours, 15, 3 hours. So if you're wanting to keep it after 1 hour and have it stop, that's up to you. But once in a while I come across a large activation and they did not change the default. So I don't want you to think that it's going out completely because those are only 1 hour's worth of activations. Any questions on SINs? Next, text to 911. We are trending high in, as we talked about last time, our annual for 2020 was 7,061. Year to date is, excuse me, 2,854. And that's averaging 714 a month. This time last year, we were averaging about 500 a month, but our sessions have gone way up. We are about 30% higher than we are from last year. On text messaging, we're going to be discussing further on in the meeting under Emerging 911 Working Group about integrated text to 911. But is there any questions on the platform other than that I might answer? Thank you. Legislative items, the suicide hotline. I don't know how many of you've heard this. I sent it out as a, excuse me, as an attachment. The announcement that they're doing a nationwide suicide hotline of 9, and that is incorrect. It's 988, so I mistyped that. It's 988. And so because of that digit, those 3 digits, everybody will have to do 10-digit dialing. But I believe when we do all of your speed dials, they are 10-digit dialing. They expect the hotline to go live in October. How that will interface with 911, it's undetermined because it is what they call an N11 number, a 3-digit number. So there's lots to be decided on how that's going to work, but they're starting to prepare us. So 988 suicide hotline. Any questions on that?
Who's supposed to answer that, Liz?
Hopefully a call center, not 911. I thought about that too. I don't know how it works. I think it will just go by region. In my mind, I'm not sure if they're going to do regional suicide hotlines, but it's going to take a skill set and it's going to take the ability to be on a phone call as long as you need. And so I don't know if it would be a good fit to co-locate with 911 or if it is. It's on a national level, so I'm thinking that it won't be in 911 centers, but they have not said anything out. But that is something that has been in the back of my mind, is if it's going to be put at 911.
Liz?
Liz, I read a little bit about that, and it's replacing a 10-digit 800 number that's already been in place for years.
Yes.
So I think that it's just going to be the same people that were answering that 1-800 number.
Yep.
I was going to state the same thing. It should just still go to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline.
I'm curious if they'll get location information. They haven't revealed that yet, or if they'll be afraid people won't call because it gives location information. How close to 911 is it going to be? So, okay. Next is hot sensors in the car, hot car sensors. I don't know what this is going to look like for us. I suspect this will be additional data, but the FCC just approved auto companies. Apparently there's an FCC regulatory regulation that has been a roadblock with the auto companies releasing a hot car sensor, and they've approved that. And so they're moving forward. Once again, we're not sure how it looks. This is at the beginning, but they're looking to apply hot car sensor information, but I'm willing to bet this is going to be supplemental data that will be fed to us in some way similar to Uber, because this will be really valuable information. And it's supposed to sense when a child's in the car, when a person is in the car, not necessarily a child. Questions on that? Okay, on to the Arizona. Oh, go ahead. Who is it?
It's Karen Sutherland. Yeah. And actually, can I go back and ask a question about the sense?
Oh, yes.
So 5,000 identified phones require more than an hour, right? But
yes.
How can we, without homes, most homes are not equipped with landlines anymore, and we don't know how many cell phones are in the area that are registered to receive. Is there any mathematical way that we can tell when we're hitting that 5,000 number?
if you run your reports, you can see how many answered and how many went to voicemail, how many been disconnected.
Right, but I'm just thinking before we try to activate.
No, it does not have that kind of finite filtering at all.
So
It
is
just
there
gives-
anything that you advise? For instance, we had a missing child a week or so ago, and they wanted an area to get a census report on it. And I was concerned about the size of the area. And so I directed my supervisors to call MR 911 and find out. But is there any way that we could look at an area and say, ooh, that's probably too big, or, oh, we can go about that size? Do you have any history or anything on that?
I have the history of that. I leave that up to the PSAPs and the agency. So I would involve, my advice is to involve your street supervision to let them know that this is the amount. And then what I've done is a couple of times I have looked at an area that I know is not that big, but there will be a huge amount of calls. And what you're finding is, if you know your areas well enough where you're selecting, if you're hitting a big PBX like at a hospital or a business building, and sometimes that can't be helped. But I think that's one of the things that we can't tell which one of those dots represents 5,000 telephones behind a PBX, or if that is just one phone number. If you go out and look at Intel, who's our biggest telephone holder over at Dobson and Queen Creek and Chandler, it has like 22,000 phone calls behind 3 dots. So that's just something to keep in mind, but we don't limit how big it is, but you just have to be cognizant. So if you're doing 20,000 at midnight, that means it's going to go on for 4 hours. And I don't know what your citizens, how they'll feel about that. But those are the kind of things that you're going to have to weigh out. And like I said, my advice was to get your street supervision's approval of those kind of things, so that it's not just the person doing the launch making that hefty of a decision.
Yeah, no, I was just hoping that, and maybe this is something PSEPs will have to share amongst themselves, because we can't measure by homes that are in the area anymore. It's difficult to know how many calls are actually going to be going out.
Well, now, Karen, are you meaning that when you draw your polygon, it will tell you how many are in there?
How many homes, right? Not how many
How
phones.
many telephone numbers? No, how many telephone numbers?
Okay.
So when you see at the bottom of the screen where it lists all the phone numbers on that field, at the top right corner of that field, it will show how many telephone numbers are identified. And so if you have a very small polygon and you see that it's a high number, chances are one of those dots represents a PBX.
Okay.
Karen, what I did, I actually did a polygon like in some of our big business areas to find out how many phones hit in those PBXs, just so I was aware of how long it would be going out.
Ah, very good. Okay. Well, thanks for the education, and sorry to hold you guys up.
No worries.
But while we're on the topic, this is Christine, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have written down that there is a fee if you go over too many lines. Is that an old system? Is there no longer a fee if I send it out to too many homes?
Yeah, so when we switched from one system to the other back in 2009, that changed. So what we do have is mass call out. And remember, Christine, back in the day when Mace had a huge power outage and we were notifying 100,000 people?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would take a week on our current system. Our platform is very small and is not made for mass call outs. However, we bought minutes on a platform that does cost money, but we prepaid minutes that we can use for mass call outs. So when you're doing your launches, it defaults to the regular platform, but if you drop down and look, you'll see mass, and then it has $ signs to help scare you. But we do buy minutes on behalf of the region that we can use that if we ever had to do a mass notification like that and not use the system, the everyday system. So that's the only charge. And so far we've been able, we meaning Maricopa Region, been able to pay for that in advance. But if we ever use a lot of it and those minutes gets down, then we'll just purchase another block.
Would we need to call you if we needed to do a mass call out first?
I would say yes. Call me and let's visit it out. And you can always call me. It doesn't matter. I'm happy to answer questions when you have them. I give advice, but I'm not going to dictate to your agency which way you're going to go.
Thank you.
And so Dave Eaton just sent me a text. He says we have 10,000 minutes that haven't been used for mass call out. So we do have some in storage just in case we need to use it. Okay, thank you. The Corporation Commissions, I was on the call yesterday for all but a little part of it, and I was heartened to see, I know that Mike Foley was on there and Dave, Dan from Phoenix PD. Was anybody else able to monitor that hearing?
Who's on the call?
I was on it for a while. I ended up having to leave for a meeting towards the end.
Yeah, I'll be really curious how this turns out. Sometimes I think it's, you know, forgot about and closed without further investigation, but it seemed like, in my opinion, that yesterday it got reignited on to seriousness of 911 outages. And later on in our meeting under the technical report, we're going to talk about a wireline outage that Luke Air Force Base is suffering right now and how MR 911 is dealing with that, and wireline circuits from Lumen that are not working, are not delivering calls. So, and then regional activities, I sent out a letter for PSAP security. We send this out every year. It just goes over the NENA standards of your physical security at your PSAP. Most of you have it locked up like Fort Knox, and we appreciate that. It protects you and it protects the equipment. So it's just a reminder that we do every year, just to be a healthy review of the type of things you need to have at your PSAP, using NENA as the standard on security. And do we have Michelle Potts on the line by any chance? Stephanie, is she on? Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay, so I'm curious, and maybe Stephanie, you can answer. The incident involving the loss of life of your officer and the Gilbert being hurt, how many PSAPs were involved in that incident?
I believe it was 5.
5. So Chandler, Gilbert.
Well, we had DPS Mesa, Fire Mesa.
Stephanie, wasn't there about 7?
Pinal. Yeah, it was Pinal County, Gila River.
Wow.
There was a lot.
Liz, from what I saw when we were in the briefing, it looked like about 7.
7. And I was hoping that we could get and maybe on our next one, we can kind of get a regional debriefing of how that worked, what worked well, what were the struggles on having a moving incident happening between PSAP to PSAP. It did involve pursuits, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it started around in Eloy with Pinal County as a pursuit, and then continued on until it ended in Gilbert.
Oh, very good. We'll put that on our agenda. Maybe we could get that as a topic at a next one. And we can learn as a region how to, what things worked very well that we might want to implement and what things we need to look at and see how we can, as a region, make incidences like that are covering many borders, how we can make them work smoother on our end. So just food for topic. Chairman Folia, that's all I have on my report unless anyone has a question for me.
All right, please contact Liz after the meeting if you have any further questions. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. Moving on to the budget working group. This is an ongoing discussion on 911 funding for the region. This report will be given by the budget working group member, Patrick Cutts. Patrick, are you on the line?
I don't think that he is. So I'll go ahead if Mr. Folia, if you'd like to press forward. Okay. So we were awarded our grant by the state. The state has been a good partner in funding our region. They have approved quite a bit of stuff, but a few items they have not. Let me go over what they have not, and then we can go from there. So there was no approval for any logging quarter reimbursements at this time. But on the additional positions, Gilbert was granted 3 additional positions, and Mesa had requested 6, and it was granted 3 additional positions. So we will be coordinating with you after the first of the year on those projects. They covered all of our contractual, and they've also added a person to Mike's group that will be a programmer, developer that will help us take all of our platforms, whether it's the map or SENS or anything that we touch, any of our systems that we have, that they'll be able to highlight that and to work on taking it even further. As we know that one of my goals and our region's goals is to have our map turn into a portal. And from the incident that happened with Gilbert and Chandler and Pinal, this would have been a great tool to be able, as a region, be able to see whether it's a heat map or signals to show that a big incident's happening, and you'd be able to understand why 911 calls are coming in, why they are, if there's someone that's overwhelmed or if somebody's a make busy, and that kind of thing. This position is going to help us program and also analyze. The other job will be to analyze data that's coming through to see if there's any system errors or any reports to help refine that we can tell when there's struggles, so we can mitigate them before they become a problem for the PSAP. So our total was $10,215,251. So thank you to the state for that. That's quite a chunk, and we'll be good stewards of that 911 money. So moving on to fiscal year, you got the email in not too long ago. So it's ironic. I was explaining this to Robin Kramer, our admin assistant, that at one point in time, all three years worth of budgets are all being worked on in different capacities. So we are in the middle of trying to pay out and take care of fiscal year 21. We're getting ready to do all the things we need to activate fiscal year 22 come July 1st. And then we have just released the notification of fiscal year 2023. So we have a lot of moving parts in our budget. And I believe we asked, you received an email, let me know if you have not, that we are looking for your fiscal 2023. Now this is scary. 2023 through 2028. I am old. I don't know if I can be here for 2028, but that's a 6-year forecast, and it's the process is still the same. What we'll do is have you fill out your form, and the first fiscal year on the form, which is fiscal year 2023, that's when you're going to need all your documentation, and it lists what documentation you're going to need on there. And so that one is what we work the budget for. The other is a wish list that we make sure that we can forecast what's going on. That includes if you're moving, remodeling, those type of things, because we're involved in that. And that helps us with our resource management when we can look ahead and see the big projects coming through. And then in August, after we've compiled the budget and review it with the budget working group, we'll submit it to the PSAPs, and then we'll vote on it in August. And that fiscal year 2023 will start the long haul of the MAG process until it gets approved by all of the steps in MAG. And then in January, that's what we'll use to enter in for the state 911 grant. Any questions at all? Okay, Chairman Foley, I turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Liz, for stepping in for Patrick. Are there any questions from the membership? Okay, this item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. Moving on to the governance working group, agenda item number 6. The next item on the agenda is the governance working group. This is an ongoing discussion on the governance needed on a regional level. Christine will provide this report. Christine, go ahead.
Hi, excuse me. The governance group is continuing to work on a formula for helping us better understand the budget that we need to get and how we can approve positions per center. We've made a lot of progress with the formulations, but we've hit a roadblock when we're comparing small PSAPs to medium and large PSAPs. So right now, excuse me, right now we're trying to separate that out and work out and see if we need to have different formulas. So on small PSAPs, obviously they operate differently where they're sharing their radio channel with someone who's answering 911 lines. So we're trying to figure out a way to accommodate how percentage wise we should calculate how many 911 consoles they need versus centers where they use consoles for 911 calls only. So we think that that's going to be a different formulation. So that right now we've divided into 3 subgroups, small, medium, and large, to see if working through the formulas, what tweaks we need to do. So it's kind of it's a long and tedious process, but we're excited to come up with a formulation. And then we started working on the messaging that we can now do over the phone systems. You probably have seen it when they were doing some technical changes. MR911 sent a message out that they were doing something to the system. So it comes across your map as like a little messaging system that says we're working on this. So that's going to be available to all the PSAPs. So we're coming up with what are the rules for the region in using that. We've come up with a few simple things, such as we think it should be at a supervisor's console. In centers where maybe they don't have a supervisor's console, one main console that's used and where there can be supervision over it. And then that it should not be like personal messages like happy holidays, because we don't want 20 plus centers messaging happy holidays when we might be having busy calls. So we're considering that they should be specifically work related. For instance, when Chandler had someone shooting shots into the air for an hour and all their calls were then flowing over to their backup agencies, that would be like a good time to put a message out. So backup agencies don't just keep transferring calls back when they are just gonna go back into the system. So Liz is actually coming up with some wording that we're gonna put out to the group for a vote. If anyone has anything that they want to suggest to the working group, I'm willing to take any suggestions right now while we're working on that. Any suggestions as you kind of think about that?
Christine, just kind of help you guys on that. There's kind of follow the guidelines of what we do for a CEGIS and that, where there's no messages that are sent out that are, like you said, happy holidays to the different centers and that. If you kind of go off those guidelines, you can break it down a little bit. I mean, because there's a lot listed there. So if you follow off those guidelines, it'll probably be a lot easier for you guys.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
When I spoke to the working group, I told them I thought about what I would do if I had that back in the day, you know, but when I was working the floor, what messages I'd be sneaking out there. And so that's the kind of the baseline I used of what we cannot do.
Yes, because you probably would have been a rock star with it if there was no rules.
Been naughty, so we've got to establish rules.
Yeah, so the group is working on that. We should have something by the next meeting to present to you. And that's my update for the day.
All right, any questions for Christine? This item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. We'll be moving on to agenda item number 7, which is the Emerging 911 Working Group report. The next item is an ongoing discussion on emerging technology, best practices, innovative process in 911, and its impact to the region. And I will be giving this report. Our group met back in early March to discuss a number of items, and I'll give you some of the highlights of the things that were discussed. The first thing was the text to 911 issue that's been brought, that we're all aware of in reference to Comtech and the sound issues that it presents. We dove into this topic both at the meeting in March and this week, actually, with Mr. Benjamin from MR911, and Dave Eaton also from MR911, to try to determine what options the PSAPs have. A little bit of the history, you all know, with Comtech, there was some lawsuits going on with the state, and we ended up getting the Comtech system. And they had a recent update that caused the audio when a text comes in to go over the headset, causing a bit of a disruption. There are basically, unfortunately, 3 options to how to handle this at this point. Number 1 is the audio can go off. I'm told that Phoenix PD, I believe it was, has elected for this option to where they would just rely on their call takers or whoever's designated to take text 911 to monitor the screen and not have any audio alerts. The second option is to put it on your SENS PC or a dedicated PC that would be MR911 maintained for obvious security purposes. And the sound would then come out of that machine, or you can leave it as is. Those are the 3 options. The state is working, or Liz's group anyway, is working on an RFP process for next generation core services, which may include an integrated option at that particular time. But at this point, those are the options available to you. So each PSAP manager would have to decide how they wanted to have it set up. We also discussed remote working. There was some interest in possibly having remote dispatchers that are able to work from home. This is obviously a loaded topic in that there are a lot of security and privacy and supervision and technical support issues that come with that. We had a mini meeting this week to discuss that in depth, and what ended up coming of it, basically there's some that are for it, there's some that are opposed to it, and there's some that requested possibly a moderated version to where if we had a situation such as civil unrest or a special event going on that we needed to activate some, versus having multiple people out working from home with all different types of equipment and all those things that needed to be maintained. So we talked a lot about it, reasons for and against it. After speaking with Liz, one of the things that we decided was it might be best to go the route of a consultant who can look at it independently and objectively and collect all the facts and putting it together before we decide as a region whether or not this is something that we wanted to pursue. And the last thing I'll mention is this upcoming June, there's a few of us agencies here in the Valley who've been selected by Rapid SOS to do some beta testing in reference to sharing data with other agencies that comes across Rapid SOS. So we're scheduled to do that in early June to start testing that out, which basically if we got info from a caller, we can then forward that it needed to go to a different agency, we could then forward that information to that other agency. So those were the highlights from the meeting. Are there any questions about that I can possibly answer?
A question, Mike. It's Kim Wynn from Gilbert.
Hi,
For
Kim.
the text to 911 tone, can you clarify option number 2 regarding keeping the tone on the sends PC or a MR911 maintained PC? Does that mean only the text will come through that PC, or the text will still go to the call takers, but only the sound will come to the PC?
And that was a good question. And Liz, I don't know if you or Benj can answer that question. I think I had heard at one point that it can go over multiples, but if you can clarify that, Liz or Benj.
Take it away, Benj.
Well, actually, I may need to defer to Dave Eaton on this. My understanding is that you would not be able to have it on other consoles because the sound capability is related to the PSAP. So if sound is coming out one configured console, it'll come out others. Dave, can you correct me on that if I'm incorrect?
No, that's correct. So the individual PSAPs have control over audio, what type of audio, or turn it off completely, but that is at a PSAP level. It is not at a position level. So the idea for having it on a sends PC would strictly be to have the audio on the sends PC, and then the text session would have to be at that particular sends PC.
So that's what I was trying to clarify. I understand that the sound would come from that one PC, but the text sessions would have to also be on the sends PC, meaning my call taker can't log into text to 911 from their dispatch console if I chose to put the sound on the sends PC. Is that correct?
That's correct. So your users can certainly log into it, but if the PSAP is set up for audio on the sends PC, it's also going to go to any other clients that are logged into the eMedia platform as well.
Yep. Oh. But Dave, let me try to clarify for Kim. She wants her PSAP. She could have her PSAP positions, the call taking positions, in a silent mode, similar to how Phoenix PD has it set up, and then have her sends PC also on with speakers that are turned up that will be the only audio will come from those speakers, not to the call takers. Is that right?
We can't do this. We can't do the silent mode. It either the PSAP has the noise coming or they don't have the noise coming.
It's all or nothing.
So essentially, if I want sound on the sends PC, then only the sends PC can handle text. Correct. Otherwise, if my call takers log in, they're going to get the sound in their ear.
If they're logging in from a machine that has Power 911 or Vesta on it as well, we do have availability of what would be essentially a recycled machine. As an example, the machines that we pulled out of MCSO for their most recent PSAP Viper upgrade, we could repurpose those machines to serve as text to 911 machines. The big downside to that, though, is that it is another machine, so we have to have a network connection. We have to have the space for it. We have the keyboard, the mouse, the monitor, and the electrical need. So we don't want to assume that a PSAP couldn't find a place for that that may be more convenient or workable than where your sends PC is. We, in general, would make that assumption that your consoles are so congested already that we would not be doing you great service to say, here's another machine, just figure out a place for it. We realize that could be problematic, but if we have space, power, a data drop, just one connection, that machine would be the text to 911 machine, wherever we could find that placement for you.
So, but keep in mind that the over the top is going to be going away. It is an end of life type of product until integrated's full. So I know that some of our vendors are can't do multitasking, but some of them can, where you can take a 911 text and be on a phone call as well. And that will be something we'll have to further investigate to see who offers it. But we're going to have to make some sort of a decision because over the top is eventually going to wait, and then we'll all be integrated at all the PSAPs, not just us, but across the nation. So I
Liz,
think
do you have an approximate time frame of when we'll see that in the region?
When we'll see integrated.
Correct, yes.
So we can move to an integrated now, but there are some of our product providers that don't allow multitasking, meaning I can be on a phone call and I can be texting at the same time. And we can move to that now, but you guys will need to decide if that's okay. So, and we talked about that at the previous PSAP managers meeting, weighing out what's more important and what's a bigger problem, multitasking or the sound or not sound that's coming in the ear. So that's why what I got from the group is that we need to stay where we're at until we can get multitasking.
For the integrated solutions, Liz, is there a way we can require the multitasking piece to be included before we accept the integrated one that doesn't? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what we need to do, and the working group can help me on this, is we can identify what PSAPs would be able to do integrated multitasking and which ones don't. And then at that point, then we can see the possibility, and costs will always be part of it. Is can we move to an integration platform? What are the costs for that for these PSAPs? And the PSAPs will want to have it over the top still for now. Then we could do that, what Mr. Benjamin was suggesting, or how they currently do it, and maybe do a hybrid of both of them. But I think that's going to take a deeper dive. And Mike, I could use your help fully on sifting through that information and coming up with the costs. And maybe we can present that at the next PSAP manager meeting, so we have a firm idea of what we're up against.
And just to confirm, that means the agency would have to cover that cost, correct? Not the state.
I'm not saying that. I don't know if that, I think that we can have a bake sale or something. No, we'll see where we can get the funding for it, because there is a 911 grant for text to 911. We had already purchased it when the state developed it. And so if there's monies left in there, we can look at that, or we can chat with the state or other entities on how we can fund that.
Might I interject, Liz and Mike?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure to stress the importance of the multitasking feature, because I can't think of a PSAP that staffs their call taker to only take one call at a time. Most of the time you're going from call to call to call. You can't be stuck on one for 5 minutes, 15 minutes just to wait for it to conclude.
Yeah.
So that would be damaging to the PSAPs as far as staffing is concerned. If we had an incident that we got overran with texts, how are you going to handle 911? You'll have to choose one or the other.
Liz?
Yes.
My understanding when I went through the presentations from the different vendors was the one that said that they could not handle multiple at the same time. My understanding is that although you couldn't handle multiple active at the same time, it would allow you to either place that text on hold or place that text on park in a sense, just like we do a phone call, we can't talk on 2 phone calls at the same time either. And so my understanding is that the one system that did allow both at the same time allowed you to be, say, active on a voice call while typing in a message to a text call. But the one who didn't, you would just have to put either the voice call on hold while you're physically texting, and then put that text on hold while you go back to the voice call. That was my understanding of it. I may be wrong.
And I've heard that too, Jim. So I've heard that some of the vendors you can multitask flat out, and then the other ones have a workaround similar to that. And the other thing you have to remember with integrated is right now we're limited to who can be logged on because we have only so many licenses per seat. Integrated, everybody does. So you could have, supervisors, dispatchers that work slow channels, anybody, or someone could take over the text. That would be a good question. So that you don't have a call taker tied up with it. But so there's more options. And I think that if with the help of the emerging technology group that we can come up with the solutions, what our options are, and maybe we can take a vote on it in August so we know where to spend our monies and our resources towards on text to 911.
So Liz, this is Loretta. I just, after my conversations this past week with Motorola and on the site survey and that was one of the things that we were discussing. And I remember a presentation that was available, the multitasking was available on the system for mine.
Yeah, that's why I've heard the same. And then I believe, Jim, you were referring to Viper on how you can park the text messaging.
So I asked the question, and it says that Vesta allows simultaneous voice and text handling calls. So they've done it before, and I know that's part of the demonstration on that part, which is where I really looked at that part as well. So I just kind of bypassed that when we had this meeting, but probably need to discuss it again when I have them in the group, because I just kind of went over that for my upgrade. And if that's available, I would be more than happy to be the person to kind of showcase that for Maricopa County to see if it works.
Loretta, I was also thinking that Chandler and Tempe have demos coming up with both vendors. And maybe, Karen, that's something we can hit hard on with both of them, is show us the integrated text feature and how about multitasking.
Yeah, because I've seen it happen. So that's why I was wondering if maybe we could do that. I mean, because we just kind of bypassed and said, we got contact, we got to do this over the, because of the lawsuit and that. So if that's available for my upgrade, I would be more than happy to do that now. I mean, it's part of the product.
Yeah, and well, back then the cost was, it would have cost us $1 million a year to do integrated text. So that was the other thing we were up against, is we had no monies to even do that kind of thing with on the over the top. That's why we went to over the top. But I think that between you and what we learn at Tempe's and Scottsdale's demos, that we might be able to come up with some answers. But I think that if we can prepare, get everything ready, I think we can vote on it in August's meeting and start moving forward with that.
Yeah, because we do cutover in November, so that would be very beneficial to have that and test it and show it, and I mean, especially since we can see it now.
Yeah, Laura from Pinal County, are you on the line?
Hey Liz,
yes, I'm here.
Laura, can you do you have the ability? Do you have integrated, and do you know if they have the ability to send texts and answer a phone call at the same time?
I believe they are able to.
Oh yeah, okay. And Lynn, you also, as you guys have an integrated solution through your.
We do. I was going to suggest that if somebody wanted to come over, they're more than welcome to see how it works. I mean, obviously we would have to get, a third agency involved so they can send us text, because we don't get anything directly, but that way they can have hands on and eyes on it.
All right. I see a field trip coming up.
Let me know if you want me to help with that.
Okay, very good.
Well, Liz, since we're doing our upgrade, I would be more than happy to get that done, and we could work with Glendale doing texts and that, and see how that works. I mean, because if it's available, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I am too. So
And this is Christine. I really support you trying it because I don't know if anyone else has missed a text. I think I brought it up in the last meeting, but when we've had some tone issues, we've missed some family fights by an hour. So I think there's a seriousness to not having it integrated where somebody's going to see that right away.
I completely agree, Christine, because we've missed the same.
Yep, Scottsdale agrees. And I think some of it is, a human factor, because when they go not ready or log off of the phone for a break or whatever, they don't always think to do that with the text to 911. And so the person who's missing is probably the one getting that tone.
The other thing is when they log in, sometimes, where something happens, if it logs people out, they're not always checking that. And I mean, so sometimes they don't even know that they're logged out.
Mm-hmm. And if somebody's logged in, even if they're not plugged into the phone, that tone might be going to them too then?
Say that again, Karen?
If somebody forgets to log out of the text to 911 and they go home for the day, would the system believe that it was sending it to them? And maybe that's why we're not hearing tones sometimes?
no, because it's not ACD. It goes to all. If they're the only ones that are logged in, then that could happen. But if you have multiple people logged in, which most of you should.
Because we're complaining, I know that we're discussing the tones going into people's ears, but we're getting the complaint that there is no tone and that they're just looking up and there's a text up there. So whatever speaker it comes out of, whether it's the sends or continues to go into their ears, if I've got 3 people on and nobody heard a tone and all of a sudden there's a text up on the screen, I think we've got 2 problems here.
We'll see,
Yeah,
Karen.
that's the same problem we've been faced with, Karen, or we have had it where 2 people heard the tone and 2 people didn't. So we've started sending, our texts are probably going way up, Liz, because we're sending test texts almost once a day just to try to keep people more in line with answering those.
And so I'm sorry, Karen, I thought you were identifying if somebody left for the day and didn't log off, what would happen?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, I guess, if the tones, since we've got times where there are no tones to indicate a text to 911, if I should be looking to see if somebody had forgotten to log off or something and that the system thought they were sending it to that person, but since they just said it's to everybody, then there are just times that there is no tone.
That's correct.
I mean, that's a big problem because we're trying to fix it by putting it on a Sens computer. But if the tone isn't working at all, it doesn't even matter what computer we put
Right. I agree.
Yep. So our best bet is to get moving on integration. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that's an option. So the other thing real quick on the what 3 words, if you guys have noticed in your Rapid SOS portal that there's the what 3 words are presented there. I did speak with Rapid SOS, I think it was last week, and they indicated that their next phase of their rollout should have a place to query those 3 words if needed. So just as a heads up on their development. Otherwise, I think that about covers the Emerging Technology Working Group. Are there any questions I can answer? Okay, this item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. Moving on to agenda item number 8, the Reclassification Working Group. This is an ongoing discussion on the reclassification movement for telecommunications, dispatchers, and PSAPs. Shauna Henry will provide the update to this report.
Good morning. We've been discussing the reclassification effort nationwide as well as in the state of Arizona. The thing we're focusing on right now is really updating the job titles and job descriptions to be more reflective of our actual duties. It was recommended that they focus more on technical and training aspects of what our folks do. So we are working to put together a template that we can push out to all the agencies to help with updating each of those in your areas. We're also working on looking for legislative sponsors. That's been identified as one of the key pieces to getting some changes done here in Arizona. So if anybody has contacts or has relationships with those legislators, let us know. And we would actually love you to join our group too. We need all the help we can get. The big thing lately has been the reintroduction of the 911 Saves Act. Nina actually pushed out a link that will automatically locate and send emails to your personal legislators. So we've been working on sending that out to the agencies throughout the state to push out to their folks to help encourage legislative support of that 911 Saves Act. Other than that, we're just moving forward with research, trying to get legal verbiage, looking at what needs to be changed in Arizona statutes and legislation to change the classification of our dispatchers to first responders. It's just a quick update. If anybody has questions, comments, inputs, we always welcome that. Brittany and I are heading up the committee. Jim is very active on it also, and we have several others throughout the state. And like I said, we'd welcome anyone who wants to be actively involved or just your input. So that's all I've got for today.
All right, any questions for Shauna? All right, this item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. Moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the Arizona 911 Office Report. This is a report on 911 throughout the state of Arizona. Travis Jensen, State 911 Administrator, will be providing this report. Travis?
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I just wanted to take a moment to update on the RFP process for the statewide EZNet and call handling equipment. Probably about 6 weeks ago, we ultimately decided to resolicit for the process due to a couple of issues and positive opportunities that we found throughout the process. So we had already submitted for that. We should have a final decision for both the call handling equipment and the EZNet vendor probably by mid to late June. And one of the other things that we had found, as I believe Mike previously stated, was the opportunity to provide next-gen core services into Maricopa County, which is a huge win technologically for the Maricopa region, coupled with there is a large cost savings to the state that would be included with that. So to take advantage of that opportunity, as mentioned, we did decide to resolicit. Other than that, regarding the RFP, I did want to take an opportunity to thank Liz, Kim Clark, and Lynn for all the work that they've been putting in assisting in making the RFP go as smoothly as possible. Oh, and Mr. Benjamin as well, who's on this call. Their time has been greatly appreciated, and they are doing an excellent job of not only representing the Maricopa region, but the entire state to ensure that we get the absolute best product for each one of the PSAPs in Arizona. Just a brief topic regarding the budget. I did want to thank Liz for her due diligence in having those conversations with the state to get that additional funding approved for all of you. She was very proactive in meeting with me multiple times to ensure that we were doing everything in our power to get the absolute greatest amount of money for all of you and all of your centers. I know it's unfortunate that the logging recorders were not approved for this year. And in having those conversations, it's definitely something that we want to try to reinstitute. We know how important those are for all of you, and it would alleviate some financial pressure for each one of your PSAPs, which we are all for doing. Leading into that, we do have a good amount of money left over from the previous Next Gen 911 grant, the federal grant. And in looking at the new grant that's on the table through the Biden administration, the Lift America Act, there is an additional $15 billion that is going to be directed towards next gen 911 operations throughout the nation. And we're going to be very proactive in obviously getting the absolute largest amount of money that we can. While those monies can only go towards next gen 911 initiatives, it should assist us in allowing our additional funding to be redistributed elsewhere, so into MR911 and into the other PSAPs throughout the county. So there's definitely a large opportunity there for us to have a greater pool of money to distribute out throughout all the PSAPs in the state. And then finally, I just wanted to thank all of the working groups and the PSAP managers and MR911 for reaching out to myself and my team. We have really thoroughly enjoyed working with all of you, and I hope that we can continue to be a resource for each one of you. And if anybody needs anything else from the state, please don't hesitate to ask.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jensen. Are there any questions from the membership? All right, this item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. Moving on to agenda item number 10, which is the Maricopa Region 911 Technical Report. Let's see. Mike Benjamin and his team will provide us an update on this report.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, or late good morning here. Our staff right now, we are sitting at 2 vacancies, senior level vacancy and 1 field technician vacancy. We're in the hiring process, which follows the City of Phoenix process for this, which is very rigorous and time consuming, but we're working through that. I'm going to swing the next section over to Mr. Eaton. He's going to bring up a topic regarding some broadcast info over the map. David?
Certainly. So Christine had mentioned the working group for governance has been talking about how to manage the broadcast functionality since we're going to be deploying it to all PSAPs. Just some of the technical background of the new broadcast functionality. The previous map primarily was run by either MR911 or Chandler PD, being our network, our after hours knock. So this will be available to everyone. That being said, we've also built some functionality behind the broadcast message so that if we get a character like Liz that wants to send out happy holidays to everybody, we're actually capturing the IP address and the PSAP that is sending out that broadcast. So if there's any shenanigans along those lines, we'll know where it's coming from. It's time stamped as well. So that information is stored temporarily in a database and it's aged out after 2 weeks. So we're not storing these messages for any amount of time. If you need to refer to that information, quickly after the message is sent out, we can certainly get access to it, but that will be aged out automatically after 2 weeks. Additionally, it can be designated by position. So if you have a supervisor's position or 2 that you want that set up, we can certainly do it on a per position basis. So that will be something that you need to think about if you want that broadcast functionality at your PSAP, which position you would like that designated at. And beyond that, we'll just look for the guidance from the governance group about how that's going to be rolled out and used. But that's the long and the short of the technical side of it. Also, the message can be a little bit longer than the previous map version. So previously we had about 85 characters that we could work with for the message. The new map allows 125 characters, and the clients, after they see the message scroll across the map, do have the capability of just clicking on the message to clear it out. So it's not, scrolling indefinitely across their screen. So once they've reviewed that message, they can click on the message to clear it out. That's all I have about the broadcast functionality. Continuing to evolve the map. As far as, excuse me, as far as the base map layers are concerned, I don't have anything else unless you guys have any questions. Thank you.
Dave, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
I don't know if catching off guard because I didn't prep you for this, but Rapid SOS put out a, we're releasing announcement in the mail, email. I don't know if anyone else got that in their newsletter. And they talked about emergency response area. The Apple is now delivering an emergency response area from calls. You didn't happen to catch that, did you?
I did, and it appears like any of their new shiny objects that they're deploying it to their Rapid SOS portal only. There hasn't been any, from what I can tell, there hasn't been any additional API functionality where we could pull that information into the map, not at least at this time.
So am I reading it correctly that when you have an incident in middle of a field that it will give it an address?
That was my understanding of the press release. Yes, they're trying to basically do a reverse geocode on a XY location to give you some sort of address information.
Okay.
Liz, it says that it'll give you a civic address and a search area, so that you have a starting point and then a radius around it.
Thank you.
There is one additional item that I had just deployed to Phoenix PD's map. The way that the GIS data works, a lot of our freeways it's difficult to search on them because I-17 doesn't actually intersect with a roadway, but obviously everybody wants to be able to search on 101 and 7th Street or 7th Avenue, that type of thing. The way that the data that we have internally works is those intersection searches were difficult to do at best. So Phoenix PD had mentioned that was a difficulty, and I've been working with doing those searches with Esri. They have a world geocoding search engine that we can kind of narrow down to our particular area. So we can, I haven't deployed it across the region yet. So Phoenix PD does have the capability, they're testing it out, but you would be able to do a search on I-17 and Peoria or Loop 101 and, Northern, whatever the case may be, a little bit easier than we have previously been able to. It also leverages some commonplace capability. So you can search for Starbucks or Walgreens or CVS, those types of commonplace features are in there as well, which depending on where you're searching, you might need to narrow it down to do Starbucks, Glendale or something to that effect to narrow down the search results. So that's some additional functionality that is just got rolled out to Phoenix yesterday, and we'll be pushing it out to the rest of you guys. There won't be any visible change to the map. Just when you do a search, there's a Esri address field. When you do a search, it gives you a list of the different address searchable items that you can do. So if you click on that drop down, you'll see Esri addresses, and you just type in your search and should be able to see those search results.
Just so I'm clear, so this is using that little search box on the map. You're going to click on it and there will be a list that pops up for when someone calls 911, or is this for just using the map in general for searching? So I would put like I-17 in and it pops up addresses on I-17?
Right. It's just the general search tool that's like in the top left-hand corner of the map, the magnifying glass. So if you're doing an address search, you're on a call and the caller's citing a particular address, you can search on the map where it's not actually coming through your CPE equipment. So in the case of being able to search on an intersection, that's the same location. You don't have to select the Esri locator. Everything is kind of combined into that one search tool. So any sort of searches can be entered into that one location.
Okay, any other questions for Dave Eaton on some of these map items? All right, hearing none. This is where I'd normally hand it over to Nate to give some updates on projects, but Nate is on well-earned vacation. So I will give some of the background on the project work that's been going on over this past quarter. March 24th, rather large installation at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office went live. Considering the size of the cut, we didn't see that there were major events. We were able to get through the cut. Nate started it with their team there about 6 a.m. and pretty much everything but the crying and all that was over by about 1500. They are working through some post-cut issues. Those are items that we work with Intrado to get fixes and try to sort out differences that maybe weren't dealt with during the initial planning and so forth in terms of some capabilities and so on. We had at least one failed hardware piece that Nate's working to get swapped out as well. That this was a console that had to be swapped out. Other work for projects that are in progress. We have 2 Vesta projects. So we have the Phoenix Fire locations. So both their, what they refer to as their AHQ2 and then the fire operations or the original AHQ location. So this is scheduled for a go live in September. We do have the hardware and most of that hardware has been placed and installed, getting it prepped for configuration testing and training. The other Vesta project is Glendale PD, and their go live is scheduled for the beginning of November. November 8th right now is the scheduled date. We do have hardware on site, and Maricopa Region and team are working on the racking, stacking, and initial configuration and prepping that for testing. Other project work, we've been working with Salt River. Salt River Tribal has, as many of you may recall here, because it's been quite a long project, they've self-funded a small backup location that's a few miles separated from their primary dispatch location. They've been working through getting the necessary networking and so forth to that location. We do have the hardware installed, and we believe that we can make a lot of progress on this once we get through what has been some pretty serious networking challenges in the tribal properties there. Gilbert PD had 3 self-funded workstations. They are now in service, and we're working with their PBX folks and a telecom provider. They chose Lumen to do some changes to their administrative telephony, their phone lines coming in. And then Apache Junction had a remodel of the PSAP. I haven't been out to get a look at it, but I understand it's quite an improvement for their folks out there, and that remodel is now, I believe they consider that remodel complete. As a teaser for the next fiscal year, as we're approaching here, the change of the fiscal year here pretty quickly, fiscal year 2022, the AMR Rural Metro, they will be moving to new CPE, also an upgrade for Fort McDowell, Scottsdale, and Tempe. Any questions in particular on project related items?
Mike, this is Jim Stillwell.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding our project. While I think that, we're still working through problems, and it's, Nate's been easy to deal with, and the whole team actually has been easy to deal with. We're trying to get everything resolved, but some of them are a little bit harder than others. But one thing that I would suggest to all the other agencies that still need to go through this process is if your agency has the capability, stand up your own project management team. I think when I was naive at the beginning and when I went through it, I think I seen that MR 911 had their own project management team, and I think I relied a little bit too heavy on that. I think that had I known then what I know now, as an agency, we would have stood up an internal project management team, and I think it could have helped us through a lot of the hiccups and bumps that we had between the planning and the go live and the first few days after the go live.
Jim, in your mind, would they be the ones handling all the external requirements with CAD, login recorders, admin phones, PBXs, things like that?
Correct. Yes, every all that stuff. I think that one of my biggest disappointments of the process would have been just the things that we had to do as an agency that we didn't recognize or realize until the 11th hour. And so by having that internal project management team, we would have been able to forecast and foresee that stuff a lot sooner.
I think that's a really good idea, because we do rely on the PSAP to take care of things that we can't, that has to do with other systems and our integration with them. So if you have that kind of luxury that you can pull in project management to take care of all of that, I think that's a fantastic idea.
Jim, question to you. This is Loretta. Did you have an IT member with in all your meetings, or how did you do it on that part? Would that have helped?
We invited IT to all the meetings. I believe they attended one at the very beginning, and that was it. And then, I believe it was day before go live or maybe 2 days before go live when we started recognizing, oh, well, we're going to need them here for this. We're going to need them here for that. And then it was kind of, we were behind the 8 ball by that point.
Okay, thanks. That's actually going to be a big help for me, because I was actually thinking of doing that, just getting them more involved. And maybe I'll make a requirement with the IT director and let them know I need them present for a lot of these meetings.
Yeah, I think the more presence you can get from them, the better. I think one of our biggest downfalls with IT was that at that initial meeting, they kind of thought, well, MR 911 has all this in hand. Why do we even need to be here? And so they kind of had that I'm not needed type of mentality when they could have been used and they were needed.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Jim, thanks for that feedback. There are a lot of tangents that become involved when you talk about the call handling equipment, login recorder, the CAD interface, the non-911 telephony, so your inbound lines or backup lines and so forth. We deal with a lot of that because we have to interface with those items, but when there's struggles, say with the login recorder, well, our folks, obviously, we don't have the logins for those. That's not our domain. And yeah, we do have to rely on the agencies, either your IT or professional services, whoever handles that. And I know at some PSAPs, some jurisdictions, that they have a lot of IT support. Others have a lot of professional services. They farm those types of things out. And some groups, even large entities, they don't have any IT that really shows up with a lot of regularity. So definitely hearing what you're saying, and I'll give Nate the feedback too, to make sure that he's encouraging PSAPs to get their folks to prepare, to be available, even if during a cut, login recorder might not be a lot of work, but if something's not going well with it during the cut, then trying to get them to turn something around on a dime while everything else is going on. Yeah, your feedback is definitely heard on that. Any other project comments? Okay, Liz had kind of alluded to an item that we're wrestling with. It's kind of a repeat of an item that Gilbert had not too many months ago, where some of the legacy equipment in the wireline side of things, in this case, and in both cases, the Gilbert case and this more recent case that's still active with Luke, is that the trunking associated with wireline has some type of issue. It's buried in the CenturyLink, the Lumen network, and calls start rolling over to alternate PSAPs, and we make contact with Lumen, and we end up with a chronic type issue, something that doesn't get resolved within a few minutes or few hours, or in both of these cases, it turned into over a week. Luke's not to a week yet. Tomorrow morning, Luke will go for a week anniversary of their wireline trunks not working. What we've been able to do is work with CenturyLink once we see that it is gone chronic and they're not able to recover those trunks quickly, is that we make the request then that they move the transport for those calls to direct it over to our selective routers, and then we bring those calls in on the IP connections that we have for the PSAPs. So not ideal. I guess it's probably a function of the fact that the legacy networks are just that. They're older. They're not being invested in any further. They're not as flexible. They don't have the resources that, if you have a specialist in wireline 911, no shots meant at this, but they're probably very long tenured person. And most of those people have come and gone, retired since then. So finding the specialist for that is tough. Liz, did you have anything further you wanted me to?
Yeah. So Dave Demers is on the line. Can you unmute and let us know, now that they are coming through our selective router, are you getting Ally with those as well? Were we able to provide that? He might have had to drop off. It makes me nervous when wireline trunks are down for almost a week. And Glendale, thank you for handling their calls until we were able to negotiate this workaround. We already do it for the secondary PSAPs, but this is the first time we've had to do it for a primary. And we're hoping that it will get resolved, but it's, like I said, it's disheartening. I did alert the state on it, ironically, with the 911 outage meeting yesterday. I thought this was a perfect example. They are getting wireless, so they're not completely down in the water, but it is disheartening to know that wirelines can be down that long, and Gilbert suffered through it, and now Luke. And that's all I had to say on it, Mike.
Okay, and we have been in communication with Mr. Demers there at Luke, and have not getting any, we have not received any feedback that they were not getting the Annie and therefore Ally and mapping and everything. So, and that was not a problem for Gilbert as well. So it's somewhat transparent to the PSAP once it starts coming over the other trunks. And we believe with the direction that the state is heading and quickly that these legacy networks will get retired and everything will be IP. Not that there won't be some nuances to that and some things to have to digest on that, but that will be, something that if we do find things that are difficult for PSAPs, that the system then can work to look at long-term fixes and improvements where if there's any complaints about the legacy stuff, obviously there won't be any improvements in that. The legacy is going to be what it is until it's retired here in the not too distant future. With that, if there's any questions about technical items, I know there's probably some other topics we could cover. I'm willing to try to field any questions if there's anything that anybody has.
Mike, this is Karen from Scottsdale. I have a question, something that we've been dealing with here. 911 transfers and cancels. We had a couple of failures in canceling transfers, which led to a conversation about which transfer buttons can be used when canceling a 911 transfer. And your tech came over and discussed that one button is used for wired lines that need to be canceled. One button is used for wireless lines that need to be canceled. And then the conference X button is used for admin lines. When I went to Chandler, they only have two buttons that they have a 911 cancel, and then they have the conference cancel. And it got really confusing because I started asking questions about, like, what about VoIP lines? Which ones do you use for that? Which nobody seemed to be able to answer. And so we've been waiting a while now, and we still have these 3 different transfer buttons, and they may or may not work, is what I've been told.
So the challenge with the cancel button, some of that will diminish when some of the legacy items go away, but some of it will stay around as long as you have different types of PBX or public switch telephone integration. So every PSAP can have a different variation or combination or permutation of how you interface with telephony. So for wireless calls or the calls that are processed through our selective routers, we had what we created, what's referred to as the NG 911 cancel. The legacy cancel is a bit different and they're two separate systems, and the signaling and the technologies involved don't allow us to be able to, well, and also the product, neither Vesta nor the Viper solution will allow us to be able to change that cancel based on the context of where that call came into you. And transfers are very similar in that if you have a call that comes in on an analog circuit, to disconnect from that, Viper or Vesta does something different than if you have a call that came in on a digital circuit like a PRI or via VoIP. And as an example, like take Gilbert as an example. Gilbert has PRI integration with their PBX. We also have analog lines that are backup lines, and now they're moving to VoIP. Something you'll also hear people call it SIP. SIP is the protocol that sets up and takes down a voice over IP call. That VoIP call using SIP could either, in their case, could go out to the public switch telephone network, or possibly be integrated with their Cisco solution that they use for the town of Gilbert's phone system. So all these variations, analog, and of course there's, you can have analog with ring downs or analog with public switch telephone, just a regular phone line. You could have the PRIs, which is like 23 phone lines in one, and it's digital. you have VoIP, and then you have wireline 911, and then you have our selective router, which is voice over IP, more I3 compliant. Some of those will shrink and go away. And we're working, like I said, with Gilbert as just an example, and other PSAPs are approaching us to move to SIP so that we will have fewer variations like that. We want to support you as best we can for 911 and call delivery and mapping and the data associated with that. But we also are working with you on your non-911 telephony. And there's just so many variations of that it's going to be tough until some of these get retired and eliminated from the system. So I know I gave really long answer to maybe a short question, but if we take an inventory for your PSAP and tell you these are all permutations, we could give you a roadmap of what to train your users on, but they would have to recognize the different types of lines and the different types of transfers they would be making and the different types of cancels they may have to initiate to get out of some of those transfer attempts and so forth.
Thank you, Mike, for that report. Any further questions for Mike? All right. Moving on to agenda item number 11. Are there any requests by membership for an item on a future agenda item? I'm sorry. Are there any requests by membership for an item on a future agenda? Okay, moving on to number 12. Are there any announcements for the membership? All right, if not, the meeting is now adjourned. The next meeting of the MAG PSAP Manager Group will be on August 12th, 2021. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.